This week we'll cover a topic that stems from my roots as a chiropractor because the question has come up a couple times in the past week from patients, but it's also been relevant in my life because I had a recent tweak of my low back at the gym. So this is a question that's come up multiple times over the years, and so I think it's always relevant. And that question is, how do we prevent low back pain? How do we rehabilitate low back pain? If I'm at the gym, should I wear a belt or not? So let's dive into these questions because even if you're not someone that's a quote unquote gym rat or you're not working out frequently, the research suggests up to 80% of people will suffer from low back pain in their lives. And so this is a topic that is relevant for almost everybody. And, like anything, it's better if you can be proactive and preventative versus reactive and need to rehabilitate a back injury. Like I said, I had one a week ago, and for about 4 days, I had to grab the door frame to help myself get off the toilet because it's just that sit to stand motion when you have an injured back is so hard. And things like leaning down to put the dog's collar on or just tying your shoes or putting socks on, are ridiculous. I'm sitting there and I'm struggling to put socks on by myself. And it just reinforces how much we take being able to move for granted. You don't miss it till it's gone, right? So the issue though with a back injury is it impacts everything, whereas an ankle or a wrist or a shoulder you could get around, but back impacts your whole life. So let's talk about how we can prevent that and minimize our chances from being part of the 80%. So here we are at the whiteboard, and to really understand how to prevent back injuries or rehabilitate back injuries, we have to understand the physiology and the anatomy. So if we look at a person from the front, and this will be a very crude drawing just for brevity's sake, but we're looking at a person from the front, and this is not to scale, but your low back is made up of 5 lumbar vertebrae. And then at the base of those vertebrae, you have your sacrum. And then attached to your sacrum are your hips, or what are called your ilium or ilii. And together, the sacrum and the 2 ilii, or your 2 hips, make up your pelvis. Okay, and from right here, your femurs come off, or your legs. Okay, so we'll give you some orientation there. And this person's got a bow leg because I can't draw straight with my mouse. I apologize. But pretend it's all even. And then, so here's L1. Okay, so they're labeled L1 to all the way down through L5. So if you've ever had an X-ray or an MRI, in your report, they might say, you had degeneration at L5, or the L5 disc was degenerating and you had bone spurs, etc. on that. And so there's your lumbar. Then above L1, you have T12, which is your thoracic vertebrae, the 12th one, because you have 12 of them. And from the thoracic vertebrae, you have your ribs. Okay, so you have your 12th rib there. T11, you have your 11th, or excuse me, the T11 rib, I should say. Okay, and then you have your rib cage going up above that. So this is the bony anatomy, or the skeletal anatomy. And then attached to that is the core. Okay, so one way to prevent back pain and back injury, and one way to rehabilitate back pain or back injury, is to work your core. And so many people think of the core as 6-pack abs, right? And That's why I had the guy doing with the abs in the thumbnail for this video, because he was doing an exercise that can help strengthen your core, but he also had his shirt off, and it showed the six-pack abs. All right. Well, the six-pack falls right in front here. So that would be superimposed over the vertebrae, because that's the front, that's your core. That's what everyone thinks of as core. But what I want you to understand is that you can have a six-pack and have a weak core. How? Well, because the six-pack is just one side, say, of the core. Now, what I want you to picture is a Coke can, and I don't want you to ever drink from a Coke can, because that's just nasty, right? But a Coke can you can relate to, because everyone has taken a can, whether it's been Coke or seltzer water or whatever, in your life. You've probably smashed a Coke can down, right? You smash it to put it in the recycling, or you drive over it, or you hit it with your bike. We've all abused an aluminum can somehow. Well, the aluminum can is the metaphor for our core. So you could have a six-pack, and you could say the six-pack is here on the front of the Coke can, right? 3, 4, 5, 6. But that's just one side of the can. But say I take a hammer, and it doesn't even have to be a hammer, it could just be my hand. But say you take a hammer and you hit the side of the Coke can there, and you dent it in like that. All right. Well, before you hit it, if you had, let's undo that. Say before you hit it, say that wall was straight. If you try and step down on the can, it's going to resist you, right? More so than if you hit that can with the hammer and put a little dent in it. Then if you apply downward pressure on it, that can's going to crumble easily, right? In the same way, if you have a weak core at any part of the core, and you've got a chink in your armor, so to speak, or a place where a metaphorical hammer hits you in the core, and you apply downward pressure or apply, force in some way, your core is likely to crumble. Now, in my case, I was front squatting and my core crumbled because of a chink in my armor in a muscle on the back of the core called the quadratus lumborum. And that muscle connects from your ribs down to your hips like this. Oops. And so my hammer hit me there, and my core crumbled. So when your core crumbles, your body's going to react, and it's going to compensate and try and keep you from falling or from moving in a way that's wrong. And in so doing, it usually hurts itself. And so it could go to the extreme where you herniate a lumbar disc. And I didn't do that, thankfully, but it hurt enough and inflamed enough to limit me for a few days. Okay. So we want to understand what the core is and strengthen the entire thing, not just the six-pack. So we've got the six-pack here that is superimposed over the front. Then on the sides, where the hammer is hitting here, we've got the oblique muscles. Okay, so if we draw the rest of this person's torso, you have the oblique muscles, which run obliquely, right? And there's an internal and an external oblique running opposite ways. And those muscles allow us to twist. Okay, so when we're dancing, twisting, whatever you're doing, the obliques are working to allow us to do that. And then you have one called the transverse abdominis, which runs across the core like this and kind of covers you all the way around. And so if that one blows out, that's a problem. If we turn the person around on the back, okay, so let's go back to our spinal drawing. If I do it very quickly, 4, 3, 4, 5, say, and then your hips are here and your ribs are up here from G12. All right, if we draw the muscles on the back, you have muscles called the erectors, the lumbar erectors, and those muscles help hold you upright. And then you have the quadratus lumborum, which holds you on the sides and lets you laterally bend one way or the other. So that's the back. And there's a bunch of others, but we're just keeping it pretty simple here. That's the back, and those are the surface muscles. And then you've got the glutes here, and we don't want to forget the glutes. So your gluteus maximus, minimus, and medius, or your butt cheeks, those are made up of the glute muscles, and the glute muscles are key in protecting your back. If you have weak glutes, the glutes are what we should be lifting with, squatting with, deadlifting with, getting out of our, getting out of our chair, and they say lift with your legs. Really, you should be lifting with your glutes. So if your glutes are weak, then you compensate by using smaller back muscles, and those can't hold out as long. So if you're doing a lot of stuff like not exercising, then moving, unpacking your house into a moving truck, driving to the new house and unpacking it on a day, you may blow out your back. Okay. So we've got the front muscles, we've got the side muscles, we've got the back muscles. Well, what about the top of the can and the bottom of the can? What are those muscles? Okay. Well, the top of the can is the diaphragm. Okay. The diaphragm is a muscle that allows us to breathe, right? And so when we inhale, the diaphragm pushes down. When we exhale, the diaphragm raises. Okay. So the diaphragm is the ceiling of our core, and then the pelvic floor is the bottom of our Coke can, is the bottom of our core. Okay. Any woman out there who's ever had a baby understands what it's like to lose your pelvic floor, right? Much better than a man understands it. And so if you lose your pelvic floor, even though if you're a woman who's had a baby, there's some women that have babies and have six packs after, they had one before too, but just because their core looks good after they've had that baby, doesn't mean their pelvic floor is in good shape. And so if their pelvic floor is not in good shape, just even though they have a six pack postpartum, they are still at risk of injuring their back until their pelvic floor heals and is rehabbed. So there's probably women out there watching this who understand that. And so if we put it all together, we've got the sides, we've got the floor, we've got the ceiling, and then we've got all kinds of other muscles that are key. Like, I haven't drawn them, but the psoas muscles you've probably heard of, they come off the front of the lumbars and connect to your femoral head to help you lift up your legs. The psoas muscles are often involved in back issues. So I know this may be kind of confusing to look at in someone that's not versed in anatomy, but what I really want you to see, more than understanding what the bones are and what the muscles are, is just see the Coke can. Okay. Because the Coke can, if it is hit anywhere by the hammer and dented, it's now compromised. And so now if you inappropriately load that Coke can is going to crumble, metaphorically, and that leads to back injury and back pain. And so the way to rehabilitate that injury is to rehab your core, strengthen your core so it doesn't happen again. Or the way to prevent that injury is to work on strengthening your core. So how do you do that? Well, core exercises are great. Learning how to breathe properly is key. Proper posture is key. Avoiding a sedentary lifestyle, avoiding a desk job, or if you have a desk job, taking many micro breaks so that you get up and move around, or implementing a standing desk is very important. All of these things are important. From a core exercise standpoint, planks are very important. They're very simple to do. They require no equipment. And I will link to a video that and connect it here in this video to show you how to begin using front planks and then advance from there. And so once you can, if you don't exercise at all, and if you get in a front plank and you fail, very quickly, that's fine. That's not failure. That's just feedback. But the goal I'd like you to set is to do a 60-second front plank without shaking. And if you watch the video that I linked to on this, you'll understand what I'm talking about there. But a 60 seconds without shaking on your front plank, and then if you can get to your side planks that level too, that's a very good start to having a solid foundation in your core, which will protect your back. So that answers the first two questions. How do we prevent back pain? How do we rehabilitate back pain? The third question was, should I wear a belt in the gym? Okay, and so if you worked out at the gym, you might know what a weightlifting belt is. If you've never worked out at the gym, or never worked, haven't weightlifted significantly, you might not know what a weightlifting belt is. But a weightlifting belt is what it says. It's a belt that looks like this, goes around your waist. Oftentimes it's Velcro, or maybe there's, if you ever watch Arnold Schwarzenegger working out, back then they used to wear leather ones that actually looked like a real belt. But either way, you wear the belt around your core to provide stability. Okay. So the belt provides stability and helps you, essentially push against it. So when you're doing heavy lifts near maximal loads and you're breathing in and holding and pushing hard, against it, the belt can provide you with some support so that you might get a few more pounds than you would have without it. And so my answer to should I wear a belt is typically no. Okay, there's two scenarios where I think it can be useful. The first scenario is, like I said, when you're attempting near max lifts. If you're going for a new personal record and it's very heavy, then using the belt could help you achieve that record, and it might help protect you. And I say might because if you use terrible form with a belt on, you're still going to get hurt. Okay, so if you're using it for performance, then at near maximum lifts, I think a belt is okay. The second scenario would be if you're injured and you're trying to prevent further injury because you don't have someone up, you need to lift something and someone isn't there that could lift it for you, you have no help. Well, then a belt could help protect you there, as long as you're using the best form you can because you're already injured. So that might prevent further injury. But otherwise, I don't think people should wear belts otherwise when they're working out, because the belt can become a Band-Aid. So you might wear a belt and get a false sense of security and lose your technique or your form or go heavier than you should, and then you still end up hurting yourself. And if you're using the belt and relying on the belt, then you're not using and developing your core as optimally as you could. So say you always wear the belt at the gym, but then your neighbor asks you to help them bring their new fridge into their house. Well, if you don't have your belt and you help them, but you're used to wearing your belt, you may injure yourself because you don't have your Band-Aid or your belt crutch with you. So I think the belt can be useful if you're trying to hit a max lift, assuming that you've been training and you've intelligently progressed up to that weight. And it could also be useful in some situations when you're already injured. But if you're a healthy person looking to optimize strength and optimize core and prevent back injuries, then the belt should be left aside and you should work out without it so that you can develop your core on your own. So I hope this is helpful, and I hope this helps you be able to better understand that just because you have a six-pack doesn't mean you have a strong core. And watch the video that I'll link to for the beginning core exercise to get you started. And if you can do that for 60 seconds already, then there are tons of more advanced core exercises you can progress to just by searching on YouTube core exercises. You could watch for days and never run out of exercises to do.